Hampton.
Sick.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Natalie Layton, and I am the Vice President of Membership for the Long Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. Again, thank you. I do want to note that this event is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube page and made available to registrants. It'll be sent out to you in a recap. We have a great panel today focusing on marketing in the ever-changing virtual world. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Long Beach Young Professionals President, David Koch, who will introduce our wonderful panelists. So David, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Great introduction. Let's get this party started. We've got Leslie Smith from McCormick, LA, Christopher Mitchell of CM Marketing, and Aaron Sujan, or Suhan or Sujan? How am I saying
that was perfect the way you said it first.
Sujan Creative.
My mom would be really proud of you.
And we're going to get right into it because I think we've got a lot of interest on the topic. And I'm just going to kick it off. And I don't know, should we do a free-for-all or should I just pick on people?
Whatever you want. I'm going to turn my light up a little bit.
Let's do a free fall. Whoever wants to go first. What's the biggest challenge in digital marketing right now?
I'd say engagement.
Tell me more about that.
I think that, more than ever before, people are creating amazing content and high quality content, even if it's coming from people who are not professional content creators. And I think that although that's awesome, everybody's upping their game, you're also, as a small business, you're encountering so much competition now that we weren't encountering 10 years ago, right? So at the end of the day, it's a huge challenge, not just to gain followers, but just to be seen right now. So when you kind of reel that back in and how do you fix that? The number one way to fix that is engagement, right? And engagement is more aligned with conversion and getting ROI anyway. But yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge right now is how do you not just create the highest quality content possible, but how do you distribute it, get eyes on it, and turn it into engagement?
Nice. And Leslie, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you. I would say it's the conversion. So it's good. You have a lot of likes, you have a lot of fans, but how do you convert them into your client? And so that's one of the toughest challenges that I see is people say, well, I have 30,000 likes. Great. How many of those come through the door? How many of those are clicking on your purchase button? So you have to, weed that out and look at your analytics, and Chris can talk about this, because then you can kind of see, okay, so I had 30,000 likes and, this month I had 300 customers or 300 sales that came from that. So I need to have tenfold likes using the same, keywords, et cetera, that I'm drawing these people in. Or I can winnow out those keywords and, where I'm going and make sure that my target is, I'm hitting the target. I'm not just randomly throwing out content there and you don't know why people are liking you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, engagement, conversion, what is it? What's the biggest challenge right now?
The biggest challenge I've personally been having with people is their content adaptability. Because one example I love to use is Doja Cat, the artist. So she has two songs that aren't particularly her most popular, but TikTok made them popular. And then she incorporated all the TikTok dances into her music videos and in her Grammy performances. You know what I mean? And so I feel like that's a huge example for people to look at, because people think that what you do on social media is only cute on social media and can't be used in an outside context. And that's just not true. And she just did this whole music video purely based off of this trend that was going on TikTok. Number one. Number two, during the pandemic, I feel like a lot of the people that we've been talking to who were struggling with their businesses weren't really struggling because they had bad content and nothing to shoot or anything. It just, they didn't know how to adapt to the crisis that was going on. You know what I mean? That was a struggle for me and Aaron too. You know what I mean? It really impacted our business model. We couldn't go have our meetings. We couldn't go see people. We have less and less shoots to do and things like that now, especially with all the mask requirements and all of the PPE and all of this and all of that. So, it was very difficult for us to come up with the strategy in order for us to maintain our momentum and get things out there. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like businesses really struggled finding a way to take this loss and turn it into a gain and really think about a different way to spin their content. I think that was like a huge challenge for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. How do you think marketing has changed in the last, let's say, 5 years? And where do you think it's going?
So one thing that I think is really interesting, kind of piggybacking on what Chris was talking about, you know, a lot of people still kind of minimize the influencers who have become really big and are making their money off of advertising on Instagram and TikTok, right? A lot of people, especially kind of in our world, look at them and think, oh, what, I'm going to pay this person who, you know, I don't know them and this and that. And, you know, what are they doing making their money off of this? I think that it's been a huge shift and a really positive one, in as much as it's giving women and minorities a chance, right? A lot of these people who are getting out there and creating these businesses on social platforms for themselves are single moms or single women or artists, creators. And the market became so saturated that, you know, you can't pay that much for a 30-second commercial slot, right? Like a lot of it really kicked a lot of people to the curb. And when Instagram came around and became what it is, it gave a lot of people a chance, which means that it's also putting the power back in the hands of the consumer. It's putting the power back in our hands, right? You don't have to be Johnson & Johnson or whatever it is to be able to advertise and get your brand in front of people anymore. We can do it on this platform. So to me, that in the past 5 years, the way that it has blown up, that's one of the biggest points of interest, I think, and one of the biggest changes, positive changes.
Nice. Leslie or Chris?
Sure. I'll give you the more historic view of marketing challenges. So when I started in 1994 and went to the chamber breakfast every single Wednesday, and Randy was brand new then, our mode of communication was flyers. And that's how we communicated with each other. You had a stack of flyers in the back of the room. And obviously that's evolved and people are like, what's a flyer? What do you need? A piece of paper? What are you talking about? But in the last 5 years, I think the biggest change has been the importance of video. People trust video above anything. YouTube has become the second largest search engine next to Google, and Google owns YouTube. So if you're putting your videos on YouTube, then Google's going to find you quicker. And people trust a video. And if they're given the choice of reading something or watching a video, they're going to watch the video. And especially the younger group. That's why they like TikTok and, you know, these shorts, you know, Instagram reels. They want these little videos and little vignettes. And us older folks want a 2-minute video. And some of us will sit still for a 10-minute video, even if it tells us what we want to know. So that's, I think in the last 5 years, that's where it's really exploded, has been the importance of video. And if you can put that onto your website, people will watch that and then they get a real good feel for you. They know what you're about. They understand your mannerisms. It's much more personal, especially in a world right now where we can't see each other.
80%, actually 83% now, more likely for people to stay on your website and click through it if there's a video on the homepage. That's the stat. Jay Shetty made this joke the other day, like, what's a manual for? When you buy something new, what's a manual for? Don't you just YouTube that?
Right.
Very much.
Right.
So. If I could talk about my profession. So I come from 2 ideas. So number one, I feel like a big trend or something that's really changed is content monetization. I feel like content monetization is a huge game changer for everybody because, like, we were talking about influencers earlier, right? And, you know, it's a much different tactic that's very non-traditional in the sense that, like, normally you pay to put your ads out, people see them, and then they come and get businesses through your leads, through your funnels and all of this and all of that. But it's kind of the reverse when you're dealing with content monetization, because you don't have to pay to have your content out there. You could just make content. People will like it if they like it. And the more viewership you get, the more engagements you get, the more you get rewarded in terms of monetization. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so you don't have to spend money on ads anymore, which I think is the most wildest part. Like, you know, people can just go out and do podcasts. People can go out and do live streams like me and Aaron do. People can go out and make these reels. And as long as you get that attention, you'll get positive ROI, and you don't even have to spend that much money. You just really got to spend the time. Another part is mobile adaptability. There's just a huge emphasis on making things available for phones, formatted for phones. You need to be able to use this through your phone. It should be phone easy. You know what I mean? Like my mother tells me all the time, if it takes more than 6 clicks, she don't want nothing to do with it. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people share the same sentiment, especially when technology is so scary, the way it moves so fast. Like in those 6 clicks, you can get lost super easy because everything is at the same time easier to understand, but harder to learn how to navigate. You know what I mean? And so I really do think people are underestimating how using your phone in this era is contributing to people's bottom line.
Yeah.
Your mom must be a patient woman, because if it takes more than 3 clicks, I'm out. Like yeah. I can't deal with that, you know.
Can I tag on to what Chris said? So
yeah,
in addition to, you know, he's right. You can do so much without advertising. And I would say also rely on your traditional public relations portion of that. So issuing a press release and getting a story written about you in a reputable newspaper and then posting that on social media does a ton for you. So first of all, you're bringing in new viewers to your website and into your social media platforms because they're seeing a story about you someplace else. So you're bringing in new viewers, which you always want to be doing. And it gives you that third-party vetting. So a reporter has talked to you, a reporter has looked into, you know, what you're doing and validated that you're a real business, right? And that's very important because catfishing does happen even for businesses. Like I sent them money, nothing ever came. So you want that's it. And it doesn't cost you very much to send out a press release.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Just agreed.
Agreed, yeah. So right now, 2021, we're coming out of COVID, we're getting our vaccinations. What's hot right now in digital marketing?
Ooh, I got this one. So you know what's hot right now? You know what's hot right now? Education-based videos. And this is something I talk to Aaron about all the time, about like, you know, there's like that sentiment that people learn more on TikTok than they did in school. And it's absolutely true. You know what I mean? Because you can see the most wildest subject videos and people getting so creative with the most simplest things. And you wouldn't even think that somebody would put something like this together and it'd work for them, but it does. You know what I mean?
It's more fun than going to school. Sure, so it sinks in better.
And in terms of what that does for education, you know, part of social media that works for everybody is its transparency, right? People want to be able to see what you're doing and like know exactly what the details of your work is. And I think social media, in terms of videos, really kind of let people in to see things that we would normally never see. Like I would normally never see how a resin table gets made. You know what I mean? I wouldn't see what beekeepers do. I wouldn't see what people who work in like a chips making factory does for a living. You know what I mean? And it just exposes us to new information that otherwise would not have been available to us. And I think that's a huge thing that businesses should capitalize off of if they think that they have a unique enough model that people don't know about.
Any other trends, Aaron or Leslie?
You know, I think that it's those live videos like they're talking about, like Facebook Live has exploded. And Chris and Aaron invited me to, they do a thing on Tuesdays and it's a YouTube Live, which I didn't know existed. Yeah. So all of those kinds of things, that's like your new, you know, the tabling events, you know, where you walk up and meet people. Then the new version of that is a Facebook Live platform. And, you know, join us for an hour, put your questions in the chat or in the comments, and, you know, we'll talk about it.
I'm going to say it's Reels. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Reels, that's the Instagram.
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna say it's Reels because honestly, Instagram is in, that TikTok happened and Instagram freaked out and and then they invented Reels and now the algorithm is severely skewed toward Reels. But it's not really, from a psychological standpoint, as far as the audience is concerned, you don't really register the difference between a reel and a video. But yeah, I think getting people these platforms where the editing software basically is integral to the platform itself. It's not a separate software. I think that's a huge trend. It's making video more accessible for people.
So what would you say to someone like me whose mother's always told them you've got a face for radio, but video is the way to go? What advice would you give me?
You know what you can do, which is an amazing tactic, because some people don't like to be on video, but some people speak very well. So what you could do is you could do camera shots of your work or whatever profession you're doing or like around your space, and you can do voiceovers. You know what I mean?
Or
You
slides.
don't necessarily need to be in the video, but part of the whole thing is like your personality still has an opportunity to shine through. You just got to figure out if you're going to be a very good writer, if you're going to be a very good speaker, if you just want to have like a photo of yourself in your intros or things like that, so you don't have to be so camera shy in front of people. And it really just kind of depends on your tactic and what you're comfortable with, but there's always a way to spin it. You know what I mean?
That's what he brought up about using B-roll. That's what we call it, is creative shots of something that's applicable to what you're talking about, so like a visual description, and then narrating it. But also a big trend right now, like I think one of the top 8 in video is the graphics, right? The animated graphics, and they don't need to be full on animation. Sometimes you have these kind of little vector guys that, zoom in and interact with each other. And that's not a full on animation. And that's on a cost level is going to be way more accessible for most small businesses than getting a full on animated video. So that's also something that's really fun and engaging.
What did you call that again?
They're little vector animations. They're not full on animated, where everything articulates. They're more a shape that motion is applied to. And that's something that you can kind of talk to any video editor about, and say, I'd kind of like this and I'd like an estimate for this. Again, something like what Chris was saying, where you don't have to have your face on camera necessarily. You can still create a video that is personal to the brand without it.
Even slides, just PowerPoint slides that you narrate, go through. That works.
Yeah, a lot of this Zoom thing that we're all doing now because of the pandemic is actually really useful if you think about it, right? Because if you're doing a podcast and you're doing it over Zoom, or if you're doing a podcast and you're just recording yourself on your phone, or you're in a Zoom meeting like this, I'm going to take this recording and chop it up and use different portions of it on my social media and my website. So, there's a multitude of ways that video can be used. And even as the one with the cinema background and all of it, coming from that industry, I'm an advocate of all types of video for, a lot of things. You walking and talking with your phone is going to do better than you going out and paying and getting a video made, so it's really, you just have to find where your niche is. And I know a physical therapist in the area. She also owns a gym, and she has a big Instagram following because of her bodybuilding career. But she goes on these walks and talks with her dog. She seriously holds her phone in one hand and her dog in the other hand. And she has people come on live and ask her questions about form and diet and her PT career, right? So I think and they do really, really well. I think there's all kinds of ways you can use video right now. You have to get creative and you have to know yourself and what you're comfortable with.
Okay, so 3 take homes I've got so far is video, and video. I know it's not one size fits all, but the length of the video matters. What are your thoughts? What factors go into a shorter video versus a longer video?
Chris, drop-off rates, go.
Yeah, for sure. So, and we talk about it in our show. I have the episode on my website if you guys want to see it for me to get even more in depth into it. But so the thing is that there are basically 3 gates that really determine people's drop-off rates, right? It's the first 3 seconds of the video, which people would think is like, well, why is it the first 3 seconds? But you got to capture people within the first 3 seconds, because you know, when you're scrolling through your phone, there has to be something in those first 3 seconds that captures somebody's attention right before they scroll past your stuff. You know what I mean? Like in those 3 seconds, there has to be some shot, there has to be a caption, there has to be some music, there has to be something that captures people, right? And then once you capture them for that split 3 seconds, then you have another hurdle to get over, which is the next 4 to 7 seconds up until the 10-second mark, right? Now, in that section, you have to capture them with preparing them for the remainder of the content of the video. You know what I mean? If whatever you have to say after your first 3 seconds doesn't capture people or isn't interesting or doesn't prime anybody to want to watch further, then they won't. And then your drop off rate will be 7 seconds or less, and that'll be a tragedy. Now, let's say you do all of these well. Your next hurdle is everything after 10 seconds. So everything after 10 seconds, that's when you really get the whole field on your phone about like, click this video to see more, or like open this video, you know what I mean? Because after like a couple seconds, videos don't play through, you know what I mean? Depending on how you have your stuff set up. So you have to capture them at like that beginning field. And then you got to make sure whatever you capture them with is going to carry them after that 10 seconds. Because after that 10 seconds, they could leave anytime without any reason. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Luckily, we've been able to work with data strongly enough where I could find and discern at what point in those videos after the 10 seconds really like turned people off or like really just wasn't doing it for them. And I could tell people, I could tell if people find other people videos boring after a certain amount of time. You know what I mean? We've been managing to do that very well. But to answer your question, it is basically like 3 gates: the third, the 3 seconds, the 7 seconds, and the 10 seconds that are really your make or break point.
And as far as when you're going into longer form, what they call explainer videos or brand videos, you want to try to keep those in the 1:30 to 3-minute area. I do get people coming to me and being like, oh, I've got this 6-minute or 10-minute video that I want to, you know, and then they get really surprised. So they're like, what is this price point? Why is this so expensive? Well, a lot of it is that, first of all, for something like that, the longer it gets, the more complicated it gets. So you want a 10-minute video, you're going to need 5 cameras and 5 different operators on that thing, you know, and you're going to need a lot more time after because you need to capture enough interesting B-roll, right? Like the really beautiful creative shots, to make it engaging. Because like Chris said, right, you got 3 seconds. And then after that 3 seconds, if it's not engaging, like 99% of your viewership is done. So, and that's just the nature. I mean, online is incredible because of the access, but it's also really difficult because, again, you know, the competition, people's attention spans, and because they can click away. So it's, you have to kind of balance that. You know, I totally understand when brands want a longer video because they you know, they figure if they're going to do it, why not really explain everything? The reality is short and sweet is better. And then there are also a lot of key things that you want visually in the frame that make a difference as to that drop-off rate. So it's not, you know, impossible to kind of plan out what you're going to do and make sure that you get the engagement. In fact, that's what we do. That's part of the, you know, what we do for every shoot.
Clearly, the marketing people have much more beautiful backgrounds than myself with my white door and my gray paint here. Any thoughts, Leslie, on the length of the video?
Yeah, well, and mirroring what they're saying to any content marketing. So you need to grab people with your headline, with your subhead, with your first paragraph. And so that's true if you're blogging, if you're, you know, publishing an article, you're writing a press release, you need to get them from the beginning because editors don't have better attention span than anybody else, right? You need to grab them at that standpoint, like right at the beginning, you have to put it in there. And if you're blogging, short and sweet is the way to go. Like Erin said, for the videos, you want 300, 400 word blogs. Yeah. If you have something long, piece it out. You know, it's part of a series. People like that. They'll come back to read the next part. And I'm guilty of long blogs as much as the next person because I keep going. But you want to, so if that's the case, I have maybe 1,000-word blog, but the meat of it, if you read the first 300 words, you're going to get it. Yeah. And then other people who want to spend more time, have more time, or go, okay, so what, let's hear how she breaks this down. Then they can keep reading.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And with the blogging, it's interesting too, because the way that you write, it's not so much with video. Video is a little different. It's more about the tagging of the video, right? Especially on YouTube. But for what Leslie's saying, you know, you don't want to try to expand the length of whatever content it is beyond what you actually have content for. And you kind of have to start being really real with yourself about that, right? Because sometimes it's a great point and it's something that's really necessary to get across to your audience, but it may be something that you really only need to spend 100 words on. And if that's the truth, then you need to do that, because if you do more, Google is very, very smart and it will kick you down. You know, like your SEO will actually decrease, and it won't be as effective across the board as you want it to be. So you know, as the business owner, and that it's very hard. That's why the three of us exist, is to help with that. But it's, you know, you do kind of have to start honing that skill to be like, well, what am I really trying to say here? Like, what's the meat of it? Like Leslie said.
I'm going to take a question from the audience from Jonathan, because I know this is a very nuanced question. You know, he asked, "What's the most effective form of marketing?" And I think it depends on, well, what are you trying to sell?
Yeah.
So, what kind of factors go into how you choose what the best way to position, you know, where your dollars are spent?
Type of business, size of business, time frame, because, you know, a lot of like something that Chris and I are working with Leslie on for a client right now is, you know, okay, so we've seen the results of what Chris and I have been doing, and now we're all really itchy to try to get it out to a wider audience. So everything has its limits. As amazing as online is, right? Like Leslie was saying a little bit ago, having a newspaper publish an article on you. I mean, some people are like, oh, that's so old school. Who's going to print things anymore? But it's so not true. It's the clout behind that newspaper, right? It's that everybody reads that too. Sometimes, even as, you know, as digital people who are involved in the digital space, we tend to ignore that huge demographic of retired people, right? Because they're not on Instagram. So I mean, that's a huge fault in us, like in our industry, but you reach those people because they read the newspaper. So it's things like that, you know, you have to consider time frame. So yeah, it is a nuanced question. I think it would be kind of fun to maybe try to like pinpoint that for the different people on this Zoom and see what we come up with.
Yeah, and if I could answer the question, it does depend on your business model, because the truth is that the data looks different for like a B2B business versus an e-commerce business. It looks different for a jeweler versus like a sports coach. You know what I mean? They just have to do things a different way, and you really have to take the time to invest in looking at what works and what doesn't for your industry, number one. And then you got to sit there and have the conversation about like, okay, well, we see what works for us. How could we tweak it in a way that's unique to us, that we could really demonstrate our creativity in our marketing campaigns so that it looks as unique and original as possible? Because that's a lot of where the reward comes from. You know what I mean? Making it personal and really building your brand awareness and building a sentiment for yourself as these type of people, you know what I mean? Getting a reputation involved into your work. But it could go so many different ways. You know what I mean? Like the example that comes to my mind is like, we had our Pride event last year, and going back to what Aaron was saying about like still doing prints and things like that. You know, I said, let's do the QR codes for the tickets, as well as putting the links in, as well as making sure it's in paper, because yeah, like we digitized the way we did everything because we had to adapt to the digital era for success because of the pandemic. But we already knew that we were going to miss out on that older demographic if we didn't adjust our stuff to their ways. And, you know, so we put the QR codes of the ticket links and everything in that paper, along with the text, along with whatever they needed to do to make it a one-stop shop as much as we could capture in that one little section of an ad that we had in a newspaper. You know what I mean? But that's all creativity. Another example is I helped this lady with church. She was starting like a blog or something to that effect for her church, and she wanted to mail out some boxes, some merchandise boxes. You know what I mean? That was her form of marketing. Rather than sit here and pay for ads, rather than sit here and do these Instagrams and these Facebookists and these Snapchatists, she wanted to do these marketing boxes. You know what I mean? That had cute little things in them, some little notepads, some little pocket Bibles, some little scripture things. You know what I mean? And yeah, merch is killing it right now. But you know what I mean? But like that works for her, and that she at least in that way, she says that, you know, I'm here to provide for you guys. I'm here to give you guys things that you may potentially want, whether or not you invest into us or not. Like, you still get something out of it. And I feel like that's just part of a great thing about marketing creativity, is that in some way, you don't have to spend money for people to get something out of it. You know what I mean? But it is all about time and creativity and the amount of effort you're willing to put into making your approach as original as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I want to unravel this sweater a little bit more, Leslie. Yeah, some of these factors are pretty interesting. You know, and you know, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking, does it depend on like the size of the sale, the complexity of it? Leslie, tell us how you would approach this.
Yes. Well, and I was going to say, you need to be strategic. So it's not that there's one form of promotion that's better than another. It's the promotion that works for you. So you need to create that strategy and be very consistent through all of it. And it starts with having your objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? Then decide who is helping you with that. So if you're, you know, it could be your business objectives, what your revenue is, number of sales, number of clients, whatever that is, whatever that metric is, then who is that person, and defining that persona of who you're attracting, who's going to help you reach your goals, and then create those tactics to go through that, and which may be a wide array of different things, and layering in the different things. And then sometimes be really strategic. So with that call to action. So a lot of times people will go just like, oh, quotes, I'm going to put quotes up on social media. Well, that's well and good. And you will get more followers because people like to be inspired. They go, oh, I like this person because I like that Eleanor Roosevelt quote. But look behind that. Be very strategic in that messaging. If you want people to buy your knives, then you may be doing quotes from famous chefs talking about their tools or whatever. So you are nurturing those clients, whoever they are, to come to your conclusion, which is buy your knives, right, Jonathan? That's the end of the day. You want them to buy Cutco knives. So all of your messaging is going to nurture that client to the end result will be buying your knives. So even though it looks like it's just stuff on the internet, you know, maybe it's a quote from, you know, Tom Colicchio or Colicchio. Dana will know. Maybe it's a quote from Paul Buchanan. And then you nurture those people. All right, I need better knives. Yeah. If I'm going to be that kind of level chef or cook like that at home, then I want to be like those people. Ina Garten, whatever. Yeah. Right. And so it's subliminal, but that's consistent with your messaging and reaching the people that you want to buy. Right. They want to buy a good quality knife that's going to last a long time. And it's a good wedding present. So, you know, focusing on your June brides, you know, or whatever coming up.
I still have my Cutco knives, by the way. My brother bought them for me for college. And I still have them.
Yeah.
Used them last night.
You know, and people have second homes. That's another place. You know, I don't know if you've ever stayed at a timeshare or Airbnb or whatever, and they don't have stuff you can use, and you can't really travel with knives kind of thing. So that's another market for you to somehow get in there.
I'm just imagining how that would go.
Believe me. We tried. We need a kit to take to the timeshare.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Have knives will travel. Absolutely.
Right. I like that.
So TikTok, you know, and I'm gonna be the dummy here because I'm really not on TikTok. I don't even have it downloaded on my phone. What's the deal with this TikTok stuff? Isn't it just Instagram?
So the deal with TikTok, So the deal with TikTok is, the biggest thing is that it makes everybody an amateur videographer. You know what I mean?
But is that a good thing, Chris?
It's a good and bad thing. It's a bad thing in the sense that people think that their little clips and their little shorts are enough to hold up to par with like people like me and Aaron who have to put actual like lengthy videos and stories and things like that. You can't documentary on a TikTok, no matter how cute you think you are. But the thing about it is that this is one of those things I keep saying, like, this is where people's creativity really comes to light. Like, if you really think about how many shots they had to take from their phone with their poor lighting in their room, in their kitchen, in their living room, and really try to make this masterful, funny, engaging, educational piece about it, That's what's really amping people up. The fact that they have these tools to make these things easier, you know what I mean? To supplement their lack of experience for still being able to put content out in a way that's engaging, inviting, and exciting. You know what I mean? Sure, it's a hassle to create because it's all on your phone and it's all like literally just like working solely with whatever your thumbs could like wrangle together. But it is just, again, just one of those things where it really just kind of shows you how creative people can be with what little they have available is the big deal.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I mean, should I be on TikTok? Like, nobody wants me on TikTok, right?
Because you know what I will also say is that I'm gonna be real with you guys. As a data person, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. I do suggest you check it out. But if nobody's seen that documentary, I suggest you watch it because you guys really need to understand how, you know, the content is cute. The stuff that we put out here is cute for businesses and everything, but the game you're playing that you don't know you're playing when you're on TikTok is the data and information collection game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you guys don't think we're running a hard game on your data and your algorithms, we are trying to run the hardest game on your data and your algorithms. Like I tell my interns all the time, like you guys would be so scared if you guys saw the amount of information I collect on people just to help their business. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just a
true.
scary thing that you may or may not want to be a part of, but the information is super valuable and it really is helpful for businesses when they're trying to put their content forward, when they're trying to get their stuff seen, when they're trying to make sure that people have the access to their services and products as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But you are just kind of balancing people's social trust in giving you that data, you know what I mean? And there's a quote from a guy in that movie, and he said, like, people are only as valuable as the data they provide. And I've 1000% felt that because that's just the thing. Like everybody's having fun on these social media platforms, being creative and all of this and all of that, but they don't understand that what they're also doing is giving us data to work with.
Mm-hmm.
If it's free, then you are the product.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Leslie.
Yeah.
If it's free, you're the product.
Right.
Yeah.
But David, if you know, that TikTok is like the Gen Z group and then into millennials. And if you were doing like a financial literacy course or something that you wanted people to start saving when they're, in college or how to pay off your student loans or just explain to them how a student loan works, whatever, TikTok would be a good place for you to do that.
Like really how many credit cards should I max out?
Exactly. In fact, during the pandemic, my girls are 19 and 21. So they're the TikTok, Snapchat, that's their game. And they share, I was getting frustrated with people when we were talking about the pandemic. I'm like, that it's airborne by droplets, not aerosolized. And I couldn't seem to get anybody to get on board with me. They're like, no, you can't breathe the air. I'm like, that's not it. Bill Nye did a TikTok and my daughter shared it with me. And then I shared it on Facebook with my friends. So here's, he's the science god. All the millennials grew up with him on up, kind of thing. And then it worked. Oh, I get it. And he did this very simple demonstration with balls going through these things. Mm-hmm. So, there's no personality that's too old to be on TikTok if that's your market. So he reached those Gen Z people and the millennials and whoever else needed to put a mask on. So it's all about who your target audience is.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how you decide which tools to use.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not on TikTok. Could you maybe describe, it sounds like people are putting more educational TikTok, which we're going full circle kind of back to one of our first questions, than selfies like Instagram, right?
No.
Is that perception?
Not 100%. It's all there.
Necessarily.
You can learn a new dance too.
Okay.
And then there's the Cardi B dances. No. But no, I think it's both really. It depends. So it is not a business tool. It became a business tool, right? Yeah. It really started out as seriously like makeup videos and transformation videos and fitness videos and dance challenges. And that was the whole fun thing during the pandemic, right? Silly little stuff. But where it's become really valuable is, and this is where like people like the three of us can be helpful in helping you identify if your business is one of those niches. there are certain odd niches where small businesses are just blowing up way more on TikTok than they are on Instagram, way more than on YouTube. And it's really kind of the benefit of having something like TikTok be created and infiltrate the market, or something like Clubhouse, right? Something new and a little different. And then all of a sudden it's providing this avenue for people who maybe weren't really suited. Their business model wasn't suited to Instagram.
But it took the place of Vine, right?
It did. Vine came first, and then came like forget the name of it now because it's a sting, but it had like 4 different transformations, and then it landed onto what is TikTok. And actually, TikTok now, as of January of this year, has 689 million global active users. And those global active users are on their sessions for 10.85 minutes a session. You know what I mean? Which is a very long time, because people, those 600 million people are really just kind of like branching into all of the depths that TikTok has to offer. You know what I mean? And so with those numbers, going back to the question, like, what can TikTok do for your business? You could have one of those 10 minutes that people spend on there. You know what I mean?
And it's owned by China.
And it is owned by China, yes.
Right.
And so there's some controversy around that. If you remember from our last administration, they were removing it from phones, etc. So just be mindful. Your data is going in different places. So just, you know, be mindful of that.
I think someone just shot a comment up about the algorithm being a little scary for young people, but useful for businesses. The interesting thing about some of what we do when we're working with the data is we can narrow so much down. We can narrow down what type of lighting works best, what types of colors work best. You know, one of our clients, Chris, was like, okay, we got to get the French fries have to be in the first 5 seconds of the shot, because that's what's making the drop-off rate increase, right? So it's just, sometimes, you know, it's easy for us to kind of dismiss the social media, but it's such a great way to collect data on who's watching and how they're watching, how they're receiving your message, right? Whether you decide to use it or not, there are definitely, I'm not going to be like this hunky-dory, everybody needs to be on blah, blah, blah. You know, there are definitely some businesses that simply do not benefit from certain platforms. It's just how it is. But using the platforms, first of all, bumps you up in SEO, right? You're going to be a lot more likely to heighten your organic search results for your business by using the platforms regularly. Secondly, it provides consistency, which is brand loyalty, which is probably the biggest reason to use it. But thirdly, yes, data can be scary, but it's so useful for figuring out because eventually you're pouring money into marketing, right? Once you get big enough, you're investing in your marketing, and you want to make sure that what you're investing actually is working. And that's where that social media data comes into play.
Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Let's see, in regards to an online presence, what are some of the key factors that you need to have like in place?
Got this one. So you know what? I say it on the show all the time. Aaron knows what I'm going to say. So when it comes to online presence, social media, digital marketing, the biggest thing about it is it's a delicate balance between presence and personality. Going back to what Aaron was just talking about and what I was talking about, you got to be pervasive in a way that isn't annoying. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be out here. You got to be on the streets. You got to be visible. You got to be in front of people's faces in a way that's not overwhelming. You know what I mean? Because, again, social media is socializing, is something that people tend to forget. You know what I mean? And when you socialize, you need to be seen in as many places as possible for people to recognize you, for people to see you. You know, people may not know you personally, but you know, they know who you are. They know what you look like. They see you out here. You know what I mean? You're out here. So when it comes to like developing like a good marketing strategy, it is worth looking at data and investing into the areas about like, okay, like where are we present? Where are we not? Where do people recognize us? Where do they not? Where do we have brand sentiment, brand opinion, you know, like that consumer psychology aspect? Like, is that going the way we want it to go? Are we listening and watching people in the comments and our engagements that are really extracting information to tell us more about how we're getting along with the people that we're in the circles of, the attention of, you know what I mean? At the same time, you have to have a little bit of personality with everything you do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't drive, but I sure know Geico could save me 50% or more on my car. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just one of those things. Like, were they pervasive? No. Were they around? Yes. Did they have personality with everything? Yes. You know, these are just kind of the tactics that you have to employ. It doesn't mean you have to be eccentric. It doesn't mean you have to have a talking animal representing your brand. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be all of that. You really just need to be pervasive in a way that's just not overwhelming. Pop in from time to time, make sure people see you, make sure you're not forgotten in these places. You know what I mean? Do whatever you have to do to be present.
Aaron or Leslie, maybe if I ask it a different way, I've got limited time, I've got limited resources. I can't be on every, platform out there. Is there like a minimum 3 or 5, or like, if I can just, if I'm only on like 3, maybe could you answer that question? What are the 3 most important ones to be on?
Well, I'll let Aaron answer that part, but I do want to say, and this may sound
Thanks, Leslie. No,
but it may sound so basic, but especially before the pandemic, there were a lot of restaurants, they didn't have a website. They were relying on Facebook and Yelp to hold their menu and do this. And then I saw during the pandemic, they all created websites really quickly because for delivery, they needed that. Well, you cannot rely on social media to house all of your information because you don't own it. So if the government says, nope, TikTok's no more, or Facebook's no more, Facebook is now taxed, and so now there's a fee and we're wiping out your information, whatever, I mean, it's too tenuous, and that you need to own it. So you need to have a website that you run, that you have access to. Yeah. And that may sound really basic, but you'd be surprised. And I don't know how many consultants, if, some of you, I think most of you looking around what you do, you probably have a website, but if you ever go off on your own, this was also something I was very surprised about. When I would start networking with other consultants, they would rely on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's not your website. LinkedIn can change in a minute too, and you're gone. That's not, those are great social platforms, and that helps your social media footprint, your digital footprint, but it's not, you don't own it. And Google Docs, you don't own either. I was on some webinar one day and the gal said, yeah, I believe in, housing this stuff, so I keep it all on Google Docs. No, Google Docs can have a breach too. It can be gone. So that's my 10 cents worth of knowledge. You have to have a website.
Yeah. So. I would agree, that's essential. This is gonna sound super basic, but I tend to come more from the consistency and quality standpoint all the time, simply because of what I'm involved in. I often ask people, what do you like? What are the platforms that you like? If you like being on it, you're going to be on it more, and you're going to be more consistent. Over time, there's a huge misconception, I think, about the size of an account. People kind of get, oh, it's got this many followers, and they freak out about it, or they feel really bad about their own accounts because, I had a client at one point, he just wasn't Instagram friendly. It just wasn't an Instagram friendly niche. And he had maybe 150 followers, but every week someone was seeing what we were doing, right? So, and every couple of weeks he was getting some type of a call or some type of a hit through what we were doing on social media. So I think that the consistency and the quality of what you're doing and understanding your audience is super important. And those things only happen when you enjoy posting on that platform and when you do it frequently, when you're in there doing it a lot, and because what I'm going back to what Chris said, social media it's such a big animal, but it's all about community. That's what all of this comes down to. You're building an audience and you're building a community. And whether that's in person like we're doing right now, or whether that is, on social media, online, it's still, you're making friends. That's what you're doing. That's what it's intended to do. And so use it for what it's intended for, and do, I agree with Leslie that you have to have a website. But beyond that, it's kind of like, well, do what you love, you know, do the ones that you enjoy.
Erin, you touched on something kind of struck a nerve, and that was frequency. How much is too much? How much is too little?
Okay, so the stats, you know, if you Google it, they're going to say that you should be posting on Instagram once a day, multiple times a day. If you're
really,
that's what it's going to say. That's kind of a load of it's not necessarily true for everyone at all. So I think
does Instagram say I should be posting every day?
Probably, yeah. Instagram's like post every couple of hours and we'll bump up your algorithm. But you know, this is kind of, again, they're all privately owned. I mean, they're companies, they're making money. So they're going to tell you what they need to tell you. It's consistency. So it's less about you thinking, sometimes it's turning that on its head. It's thinking less about frequency and more about consistency. And consistency is all about, like, have you ever learned to play an instrument and your teacher makes you go really slow, like slower than you want to, because they're just like, no, you need to keep the time that you can actually keep right now for your level of proficiency. You don't need to be at the speed that the song is actually played at, right? You need to learn to play that song correctly before you speed it up. That's kind of how social media is too. Like, you got to get your feet under you. You got to be able to create this quality content, reach the audience that you need to reach, retain them, engage them. And then, okay, now we're getting it. Now we can start speeding up to, 4 times a week, 6 times a week, whatever that is. But the base has to be there. The foundation has to be there. Otherwise, you end up posting stupid memes and people unfollow you, and it gets, it all hell breaks loose. So there's a lot of finding that consistency and then starting to slowly increase that. And then your following is going to respond to that because they actually want to see what you're putting out, right? If you flood people's feeds, people are going to stop looking.
Yeah. And, to piggyback on what Erin was saying, we struggled with that as well at the beginning of our live stream shows. You know what I mean? Like, we just had an idea and we just thought it'd be cool and like fun, and it really took like months to get like a really hard momentum going. And like, it really helped us propel this energy at the first quarter of the year to be able to put some systems in place to push us up even further. So on the whole point of consistency, like, you got to start somewhere, but you have to allow the time for the buildup to happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I think we get very seduced. So we'll see these ads, build 30,000 followers or build this big list, whatever. And so then, and it's advertising a webinar. Then you go on to the webinar and they'll say, yes, okay, so if you're starting with 50 people on your list, to build it to 1,000 is going to take a year. Okay, well, I knew that. I thought you were going to give me a shortcut. So it's so slow and steady wins the race. And finding what platform works for you is sort of going where the water's warm, right? So my analytics tell me this, but sometimes it's not what you think, and it turns out, Pinterest is where my clients are. Who knew, whatever. And you just have to sort of, plant the seed, see what's growing, and then keep nurturing it.
Yeah. And also the whole idea of slow and steady wins the race. There's some of these influencers, if you really listen to what they have to say, the way that they grew their accounts was treating it like a part-time job. They were on let's take Instagram as an example, right? They're working a full-time job, 8 to 9 hours a day, and then they're taking 4 hours of every single day and talking to people on the platform. That's not the posting. That's not the content creation. That's not taking photos. That's not making videos. They are DMing. They are responding to comments on other posts in their community, and they're responding to other people's posts on or comments on their posts 4 hours a day. That's how you grow these massive followings, right? That's how you organically grow. It's a lot of work. So it is one of those things.
Is it bots? You got bots doing that? Is AI doing that?
You can pay for it for sure.
You can pay for it, yeah. And there actually are a lot of really good companies who will do it in a way that you'll keep the followers. They're not just like throwing a bunch of fake accounts at you. But a lot of people take a lot of pride in their channels. A lot of people take a lot of pride in their accounts, and they are really interested in growing a community. And to be honest, yeah, I mean, in the end, that pays off because those are the people who stay, right? So it's a big deal. It's a lot of work, you got to commit to the lifestyle.
Well, I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. We're gonna, wrap up this. We had some, great questions from the audience. I'm going to kick it over to Natalie. She's got some announcements. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do breakout rooms. So, we say an hour. If you got to go, here's our, program, our pre-planned programming. But if you want to stay and do a breakout room and do some networking, we're going to do those for another maybe 10 minutes afterwards. So does that sound good? All right. Well, thank you so much for our panelists. Let's give everyone a reaction, a clap reaction. You can find them, you can hire them, their contact information, you can find at the Chamber website. And thank you so much. I learned a ton. I still don't think I'm going to do TikTok, but I want to do something. I'm motivated now. I'm fired up. I want to do something more.